Greetings all. Welcome to another night of Axanar Confidential. I think this is episode 58. And tonight we have a really special guest I'm really excited about. The great Sirius XM, the former Sirius XM star, I'm sad to say, but now Patreon superstar Pete Dominick. Pete, how are you doing tonight?
Am I a superstar based on my funding mechanism?
Dude, I think you are a rising Patreon star.
Patreon superstar.
I think you're. I think
Great.
you've done it great. I think you're doing everything great on Patreon. You've blown by our humble Patreon campaign.
We've had very separate journeys. No need to compare.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. The last 6 months of my life has been a really crazy roller coaster.
May you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, now everybody's life is fascinating. Of course, I should not, of course, forget to say that. But yeah, I mean, I had a lot of difficult, challenging things happen in my life in a very short amount of time. And before it all happened, I would say I wasn't the most resilient person because I had been growing and struggling but succeeding throughout my career as a young comedian, and then going into television and radio, and I always had setbacks. It wasn't like it was an easy ride to the top, but it was a great ride, and it always grew and got better and better and better. My career expanded, my family expanded, and things were going great. And then boom, Alec, boom!
Pull the rug out from underneath you.
That's one phrase.
Yeah. Well, I should tell everyone. Well, first, let's tell everyone. Just give everyone like the 30-second Pete Dominick bio. Someone says, "Who's Pete Dominick?"
Okay, so I am a stand-up comedian. I started my career at 19 in New York City, working the comedy clubs in New York City. I came up in New York City with all the greatest comedians of this generation, many of which are good pals of mine. And I transitioned my career into what's called audience warm-up while continuing to do stand-up, where you warm up the studio audiences, live television shows. And I worked my way to the top. I literally did. I started at the very worst shows where the audiences were made up, Alec, of people who had no plans to be in that audience when they woke up in the morning. I would walk out the microphone. There was a show called Craft Corner Death Match. And it was on, I don't know, the Learning Channel, but like a crafting competition hosted by Jason Jones, longtime Daily Show correspondent. And so I warmed up the audience, and I remember asking the people in the audience, "Where are you from?" And the guy's like, "Outside." I'm homeless. So that's where I started my audience warm-up career. And I did all kinds of shows on the way up to getting the gig at the Daily Show, and then the Colbert Report. And then I also got hired at Sirius XM in 2006 after the Montreal Comedy Festival. And I hosted a show at Sirius XM on the Comedy Channels for a couple of years, and that expanded into my own talk show about independent political views on issues, and we talked about all kinds of public interest stuff. And then I hosted that show that grew and expanded in different channels for 12 years at Sirius XM, as well as working as a correspondent at CNN and MSNBC, and that was well over 30 seconds. I lost my gig at Sirius XM after 12 years and 5 contracts. They decided to kill my channel and not renew my contract in October of 2019. And then other shit happened in my life, if you want to.
Which we'll get to. But so, and for the audience, I've known Pete only just from listening to him for 10 plus years. I first started listening to, I guess, when I got to what are we having? Bud Light. Okay, That's cool. I was more a Michelob Ultra guy, but
I get those too.
Yeah, okay, it's good. My girlfriend mocks me for it, but I don't care.
That's fine.
So
welcome here.
Yeah, and usually it's funny. Usually I'm drinking when we're having this show, but I was like, no, Pete's on tonight. I got to stay.
If you want to go get a drink, I'll carry it.
No, that's all right.
Anyway, yeah,
I'll just call down and have Crystal bring it up.
You were a long time listener of the show. You'd contacted me, I think, in different ways over the years.
Yeah, from time to time. And then I'll tell you,
you're a name that I recognized and would read, and probably often, hopefully, of course, respond to. But it was like I got to a point where the audience was pretty big, but I tried to correspond and connect with listeners as much as I could. But it becomes hard. But when you respect someone and their view and their, you think they're smart and thoughtful. And I mean, that's how I felt when I would see your name come up. You were in the circle of people I would want.
Oh, well, that's nice.
That was my relationship with you.
That's nice. Yeah. Well, I remember, it's so funny. I remember the first time you responded, I was like, he responded to a comment on Facebook. I'm like, doesn't he have better things to do than to be responding to? But you've done that. Your whole, as long as I've known you, you have always, more than anyone I've ever listened to, engaged your listeners and made them really kind of a part of your show, and you at least acknowledge them and talk about them and read comments on the air and what have you.
I have a view on that. I have a view on people, and I wonder what you think of it. But I remember my wife and I were in Washington, D.C. for the White House Correspondents' Dinner because I'm a very big deal. And the morning of, we're in D.C. getting bagels at some bagel place, Bagelry in D.C. And I'm waiting for on the way in, there's a homeless guy panhandling, asking for money. And then on the way out, there he is. And my wife was still in there, going to be in there for a while. So I started talking to this guy. And we talked for 45 minutes.
Wow.
And he told me a hilarious story about how he got arrested and how he went to jail and how he hijacked the prison bus. And then when the cops finally caught up to him, they said, "You like driving? You're going to be, I don't know. I can't remember the whole story. I'm sorry. I just ruined that. But the point is, this guy had a great story that he told me. And I felt I felt richer after talking to him. I felt, really interested. And I remember thinking, that guy's a homeless guy, a little mentally ill, probably. He talked about his mental illness. He was totally, sound when we were talking, but he struggled. And I remember how much I was going to meet all these celebrities at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I was going to be around all these high-powered elite people, and counted as one of them. But the most fascinating conversation I had that whole weekend in Washington, D.C. was with that homeless guy outside the Bagelry. And I think from that point on, and certainly before, I just thought I value people and conversations with people, and always think that everybody has something to offer. Certainly all kinds of things to offer, all kinds of lessons and gifts. So every engagement that I have with a person I try to take something from them. And so if people were going to listen to my show because they liked me or my show, then those are people I had a much more of an interest in talking to and learning. And then once you host a show for as long as I did, every day, 3 hours a day, you curate an audience of somewhat kindred spirits. Yeah. And people who listen to my show they're amazing people. They're brilliant, passionate, curious, oftentimes very funny, kind people. And I love to talk with them. And it's not, it's not weird. I get something out of it. So way of explaining why I connect, of course, personally with my audience, but with anybody that I see anytime, given the situation. That's how I was raised.
Why I want to acknowledge one of our longtime listeners, Michael Weir, and his $10 super chat, saying he's enjoying his 40-ounce vodka screwdriver. Welcome to the show, Pete Dominick.
Well, Michael, I'm enjoying your headshot. I mean, it has so much with the hat and the dog. It's really telling me a story.
Yeah, you don't want to see Pete's story. We'll call his at a shop soon. You don't just use the word curate your audience. You cultivate your audience. You grow your audience and you enrich your audience, because that's the way I always felt listening to your show. I felt it was the one show I could listen to besides Julie Mason, where I didn't feel like I was being preached to. I felt like I was getting fed information that I had the opportunity to pass judgment on or be enlightened by.
Yeah.
And usually I was being enlightened. It was about a subject. Dr. Aaron Carroll, I've learned so much about healthcare from Dr. Aaron Carroll for over the past 10 years.
He's the greatest at explain. If I have any talent, it's finding smart people that are good at explaining things on the radio in an interesting way.
Listen, I certainly agree. And that's the way I always felt. By the way, as I said the other day, one of the greatest hours of radio I've ever listened to was you and Julie Mason, my two favorite people on Sirius. at the same time.
That's great. I should get her on the podcast. She reached out to me kindly after Sirius let me go, and then I invited her on the show one time and I never heard back from her. But I should reach out to her again. I see a comment in the live comments. I love to respond to people. If anybody is commenting on, I'll read them and respond to them. As a host, I can't not look at that. I hope
go for it.
But I think it's interesting. Somebody wrote, some of my best friends are homeless. Darren wrote that, and I told that story because the point of the story is I'm in Washington D.C. at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This is back when President Obama was president, and the person who I enjoyed talking to the most was the homeless person, which is the point of every person is valuable. Every life is rich with experience and with a story. And I would argue that a lot of people who have struggled a lot more in any number of ways, financially, mentally, health-wise, their story is more interesting than Robert Redford's. I don't know why I picked Robert Redford, but I was thinking of like a beautiful person.
You're showing your age there because
yeah.
Boomer.
Kim Kardashian, like who would I rather talk to? Kim Kardashian? Well, I guess I'd like to talk to her or this homeless guy. Anyway, that was the point of that story, Darren. And I'm sorry to hear that some of your friends are homeless, but that's cool too. I guess you want to have a home.
And Darren lives in Montana, so boy, that's a rough place to be homeless.
Well, those are militia guys.
Gosh, probably.
At least even though they're homeless, they're also survivalists.
By the way, we will, Pete and I talked about beforehand, like, okay, we're going to try not to be political tonight because that's, on a Star Trek show, we try and be apolitical.
I'm happy to be. Yeah.
So, but I did see one of my favorite.
This is divisive, isn't it? It is.
Bud Light's way divisive. Way divisive, but I don't care.
Something less divisive. Got all kinds of props. Where are we, everybody? Where are we?
Well, I tell you, the other thing we do talk about, and is we do unboxing videos of junk food, and I've been trying to explain to everyone the brilliance of Drake's cakes.
Oh,
oh no, you're not a Drake's fan?
I'm not. I am not. I haven't bought a packaged pastry in a long time. I don't know what it is about like the packaged a pastry in plastic seems like it was made. I don't know. I like I'm a snob about baked goods, I think, because living in New York City and all the bakeries and then, the Jewish delis and all that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that's good. And,
I don't, but yeah, I mean, I can engage in the conversation and, comparing some of these packaged goodies. My daughters certainly like anything like that. Pop-Tarts. Oof. You name it.
Yeah, I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, I really regret the fact that I missed the seasonal pumpkin spice Pop-Tarts this year.
Wow, those are a thing?
They were, yeah, but I did get the pumpkin spice shredded mini wheats.
Well, today I got in the mail a pie from some of my favorite listeners of my program. They longtime listeners of my show, and they own their own business. It's called Noble Pies.
Noble Pies. You've been talking about that forever.
For years. And they sent me a pie and cookies. Well, so my whole family. And that's my thing right there. And they are amazing. So that's what I'm into tonight and tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be gone by the middle of the night.
What kind of pie did they send you?
Always mixed berry. I have I'm accomplished enough, Alec, that I have a pie named after me.
No, you don't.
It's called Pete's Mixed Berry Pie. It's the best pie in the country or arguably the world. It's at Noble Pies, noblepies.com. I don't think they really ship. I don't know what they're doing in terms of shipping now, but they've been on now QVC. It's been great. And that's another cool thing is that with hosting a national radio show, being able to give attention to certainly individual experts raising their media profiles. And we've had a lot of people that kind of started out on my show. I made them media people, because I would find smart experts on things and they didn't have maybe an interest in going on the radio or on TV with me. And I would say, you really should, and you should consider this. And they would come on and people would love them. And, from constitutional lawyers to doctors to scientists and others. And so I also, try to take in listeners and promote some of the things that they're doing. And Tom and Leslie are independent business owners and they have a pie shop and their pie is the greatest.
God,
They
all
always
right.
hear me talking about how much I love pie. And so
Well, clearly, but that's okay. Yeah, I'm a cake guy myself, and we have a great cake shop in Atlanta. So,
I knew
yeah,
it was going to get divisive.
Pie versus
pie, oceans or lakes. Here we go.
yeah. So let's talk Star Trek. You did tell me you've interviewed William Shatner. You've interviewed George Takei.
Yep.
Tell us about that. Tell us about Shatner.
Well, Shatner is got to be, how old is he in his early 80s?
80, at least 83, at least.
I'm as a stand-up comedian, I'm always kind of judging and reacting to others' sense of humor, and for a living, really. And I knew Shatner had a great sense of humor, but I think you have this kind of ageist assumption that the older folks get, the slower their wit maybe, or the less they're kind of with the times in terms of humor, and they're not going to be able to hang or something. So I think that the coolest thing about William Shatner was that he's this 80-some-year-old guy, and most people don't even live that long, and he's
89.
Is he really
89? Yeah.
Well, he looks great.
Yeah, he does.
I can't believe this was maybe a year ago, maybe a year
Okay.
ago. And he was so sharp and funny and down to earth. And he came in on the show, and I remember it was yesterday. He immediately, he'd never been on the show. He didn't even know who I was, but he immediately acted like we were best friends. And that's a sign of a great performer, a great live on-air performer, because what they do is they throw it out there and they see if the person, in this case me, hosting the show, is able to dance. How good is this person? And if you can't dance, you can't dance. They're dancing alone. They keep throwing it out there, but if you can dance, they come back to the show, number one. But number two, it's an amazing live conversation. So Shatner comes in and he throws me the first ball of the conversation, said, I was just on, what is it? Regis and whatever. And, Regis is now long gone off that show, but Kelly, whatever, the Kelly and Parker. And he said, and he goes, and Pete Dominick, he knew me, my name. He was prepared. He goes, Pete Dominick, my fly was undone the entire time.
Oh, God.
That's how he started his interview with me. He took something that happened earlier, which is embarrassing. He's an icon, and he opens with it. So he owns that, and then we are off to the races, and we danced, and we danced, and we danced the entire half hour. His humor, he just kept giving, and I just kept receiving, and I would give, and he would receive. And I made the only one mistake with Shatner, which was I said he reminded me a lot of, and I'd love to see him do something with Henry Winkler, who, of course, played Arthur Fonzarelli, and so many other things, right? And he reminded me that he'd been on a show with Winkler, like this reality show where they travel around the world with who is the other the boxer, George Foreman, and somebody else. Anyway,
wow,
they're great together in that show, but I made the mistake of forgetting that they'd done that together, as I suggested, because they both of those guys, Henry Winkler, I got to know pretty well, are older actors who are hilarious live. And just so what I can tell you about Shatner is he was kind, he was down to earth, completely egoless, as far as I could tell.
Wow.
He was hilarious, and he was a giver, like in terms of his humor, and he was just genuine and professional. And he didn't have to be. He's William Shatner. He's doing a Sirius XM satellite radio show. Who the hell is Pete Dominick? And he treated me like I was David Letterman.
That's great. That's great.
I crotch and said he could do it because he's famous, and I thought that was like really surprising. I'm kidding.
Well, one of the most important stories I ever heard in my life was about just that. And it was, someone was telling a story about a reporter who, back in the days of in the 1800s, I guess that was the days of great British politics and the time of Benjamin Disraeli, who did who defended the Dreyfus affair. And this reporter was sent to interview Disraeli and the guy from the other party, the two great figures of British politics at this time. And so he goes and he interviews them both, and he comes back, and everyone in the office wants to know, well, what was it like? You just interviewed the two great figures of British politics. What was it like? And he said, well, I went to so-and-so's office first, and God, I left that interview, and I just felt like he was the smartest, most endearing, wonderful human being I've ever met. They go, wow, okay, great. Well, what was what about Disraeli? He goes, well, I went to interview Benjamin Disraeli, and I left the office feeling like I was the most wonderful, smart, intelligent person in ever been. And I think it tells you something about how you build rapport. And are you in a conversation to make yourself feel good or make the other person feel good?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that it depends on if the conversation is in front of microphones and cameras or if the conversation is out on my deck. But I think we're talking about public conversations.
Sure.
And that's something that's always interesting for me to change back and forth in those roles in my public and private life when I'm socializing privately, to make sure I'm not on the air. I don't have to drive this conversation, although I generally tend to, because I can't, as I told you the story earlier about the homeless guy and the White House Correspondents' Dinner and interviewing William Shatner. When you do what I did and do every day, which is talk to, have thoughtful conversations, is the easiest way to say it. Often having thoughtful conversations with some pretty experienced, educated, often legendary folks in ways, you tend to not want to make small talk ever with anyone. It almost makes me unfriendly in public because I love strangers. I got no problem, but I don't want to make small talk about the weather. Can't do it. I do a joke in my stand-up act that when people start making small talk, I'll say something awkward just to end the conversation. Classic New York City, kind of thing. You get on the elevator and someone else gets on the elevator and it's either really hot or really cold outside. If it is, someone will always, first give you the kind of nonverbal. If it's cold, like, ooh, and you just look at them like, oh, here comes something about the weather. Sure is cold out there. I look back at them and say, yeah, I hope no old people die. That will get them off the elevator. I can't do small talk. I want to get right to something, anything, quickly. No time to waste.
And so on your show, you're talking to people who have deep expertise often in specific subjects.
Yeah.
But to your credit, you never come off like ignorant. You always have interesting questions and lead the conversation in a way where that person can impart all of their knowledge.
That's called preparation, Alec.
I guess it is.
Yeah, I prepare. I don't.
You clearly do. You clearly do.
Single guest, I prepare as much as I can the interview, and then once the interview begins, I wipe the slate clean with my preparation because I don't want a script, but same thing with stand-up comedy. I want to be ready for anything. I've got a whole bunch of questions and thoughts and things I want to get to with you, and certainly some interviews with certain people are a little bit more focused or scripted, a little bit more, but you want to just be ready. And at least that's my style. Just be ready for anything with this person. If it's a stand-up comedian, you have no idea what's going to happen. If it's an academic, a historian, you have a pretty good idea of where it's going to go. If it's a listener or a caller, then again, you don't even know this person. So there's no prep. So you just got to be a damn ninja, always ready for anything, Alec.
This is you do it. Yeah. Pete Fu.
Yeah, sure. I like that. That's my style. I like that a lot. I'm going to keep that. I'm stealing that. Pete Fu is my style of conversation you can hear every day on Stand Up with Pete Dominick podcast.
By the way, I really enjoyed the other day, what was about 5 days ago, someone called your show The Empire of Goodness.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, remember? Oh God, that was
so funny. Did I read that on the air? Yeah.
Yes, you did. I was like, oh, that sounds like a T-shirt. Pete and the Empire of Goodness.
I like that. It's a sense. I think there is. Not everybody is going to agree with my moral code or my values, and they shouldn't. But I think there's a resonance, and the people who do kind of like to think about the world and life and human rights and civil rights and things like that the way I do. It probably resonates with a lot of them. And I should say I'm not in any way a moral leader. I'm a moral follower. I mean, I have no original thoughts at all. I really don't think I have any original thoughts, but I'm very good at adopting and adapting mine to others that have certainly come before me. So I've got a lot of mentors, and I just try to grow and gain wisdom throughout my life and be a better person. And when I lost my job, I had a lot of struggle, but my marriage actually got better. I wrote something for Katie Couric's daily newsletter, which is really great, actually. And it was called "I Lost My Job and Saved My Marriage." I think that's what it's called. And so, I've learned a lot in my life in the most personal, deep ways about how to be just a better man, a better father, a better husband, a better friend, a better talk show host, a better guest on a live YouTube show, which is why I'm now taking my shirt off forever. Sorry.
I keep telling you, it's not the strip night tonight. But all right, I'll bring you back for that. Okay. Although we do typically we have a rule that if I yawn, I have to take a shot of alcohol. I think I have my bottle of
I like
because we were getting into it where I was just tonight I just have some amaretto tonight. But I just working long days. You get to the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock shows and I'd be yawning, and they started making a drinking game out of it, the fans.
Oh, all right. All right.
So they
I like it.
And I should point, and I wanted to let everyone know that when you posted about that art, I guess it was about that article you posted on Facebook about how you lost your job and with it. And and I made a comment because I was just like so blown away by the vulnerability and the humility and the intelligence behind your statement. I was like, wow. I mean, I always liked you, but I was like, now I got to respect you. But it was really, without making a joke, I was really blown away. I mean, I felt like, wow, this is a guy that has earned my respect by what he's been through.
Why do you think vulnerability is something that people respect and appreciate when they see it? So let's just talk about men.
Because we don't do it. That's why.
Sure, but why do you think when you look at it and say, I respected that? Why? What is your kind of moral judgment or value on the ability for one to be vulnerable in a moment or in their life or as a personality characteristic? And I'm gonna listen to your answer while I'll get a Coors Light for you.
Okay, mix it up. Wow. Well, I think by having gone through acting class back which I started in 2012, actually, which you'll appreciate. I studied with Howard Fine, who was Chris Pine's acting coach.
Well, you need to explain to viewers that I told you before we went on that he's my man crush.
That's right. Yeah. Pete has a man crush on Chris Pine, which I can't really argue with that one, right? I mean, that's a good one. But anyway, when you start taking acting lessons, it's all about being vulnerable and dredging up shit and being comfortable with that, and it's really, really difficult. It's really, 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 especially for us men, but it's really difficult. So when someone does that of their own volition, not for an acting gig, but for growth, I know how hard that is. I know how hard it is to say, wow, I was wrong, or I fucked up, or God, I feel like shit because and us guys are so tied to our jobs, right? I mean, I know I am. My success in whatever I'm doing is the number one determiner of my self-esteem. And we're so tied to that. And so when and I can only imagine having that stripped out from underneath you and how that would make you feel, and how would that would, and so understanding what you went through, I'm like, oh my God, you spent so many years building up your career, and then to have that pulled out from under you, that's devastating. And most of us would crawl inside ourselves, and you were open to learning, open to sharing, open to letting everyone know this is what happened to me and this is what it did to me. And it's even little things like it's stupid as hell, but I finally am readily admit on Facebook that I cry every single time I see Field of Dreams. I can't help it. I cry. Now that's stupid, but that's I
have a really funny story about what you just said.
Okay, go for it.
I think your viewers will appreciate this. Kevin Costner and I became pretty friendly.
Oh, okay.
Years ago. And I can give you the long version if you want to know, some stories about Kevin Costner. But Kevin Costner, I like to say this. Kevin Costner taught me to fly fish at his Aspen ranch.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And I caught a great fish with him and his boys. And I also played catch with him and shagged flies because he has a baseball field at that ranch. It's an unbelievable experience. I'll never, ever forget it and always value it because of the baseball film that he's obviously involved with. But the first night I ever hung out with him, we were at his hotel room in New York City, and I told him that my dad, when I told my dad I was hanging out with Kevin Costner, my dad told me to tell him that he's mad because he cries when he watches Field of Dreams. And Costner said to me, "You tell your dad that's not my fault." Never forget it. I was like, no, he seemed like annoyed. He seemed like annoyed. And I guess rightfully so, because my dad was trying to blame the fact that he was getting emotional on Kevin Costner's excellent acting in that script, I suppose. But he was like, "You tell your dad that's not my fault." And I was like totally shocked by his reaction. I remember thinking, all right, I'll tell him.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That is great. That is great.
Yeah.
So share with, listen, I don't want to, you want to hear, I feel like I've got this precious resource in Pete Dominick. I don't want you to share your story so those people watching can understand like I do. I mean, what you went through and the way you reacted helped me open up about certain things as well.
Oh, well, I'm very honored to hear that. What I went through was I lost my job, which was my dream job that I thoroughly enjoyed doing, which was I built this national radio audience over 12 years at Sirius XM. And I'd, at that point was making really good money. And so my family had a fantastic life, and we took great vacations and, bought whatever we wanted to do within reason, obviously. And our kids, had a great education, well, public schools, but like dance classes and all everything that, you could imagine. The American dream, living my ultimate dream, which is to be a host of a show. That's always what I wanted to do. I also hosted a show on TV on CNN for 8 weeks. I mean, I'd done everything I wanted to in my career by the age of 40, and I'm now 44. And so when I lost that job, it was devastating for all of the obvious reasons, but it was a very public loss as well. Mostly when people lose their jobs, get laid off, as unfortunately millions of Americans are dealing with right this minute. Just got a text from a woman listener who told me that her husband just got laid off. What happened? It can be private, it can be yours. Mine was not. Mine was a public loss, and it wasn't that it was humiliating or anything like that. It's not that I felt like a sense of failure. We felt a loss. Your favorite radio show that you listen to is gone. It's a real loss because it's not like many other things. A daily show, which is real and personal, which is not scripted, which is not a reality show. You hear, and the way my show was you heard a lot about my life and my choices and my struggles and my successes. And so to lose that the way I did was hard for thousands and thousands of people, and it still is. And I still hear from them, even though now I'm doing the podcast daily, and people are loving that. It's great. And I hope that your viewers will consider listening to the Stand Up with Pete Dominick podcast. It's there every day. I talk to experts and have interesting conversations with, quote, regular people. And so,
Patreon / Pete Dominick.
Well, the funding subscription mechanism is patreon.com / Pete Dominick. But, worry about a paid subscription after you've listened to it and fall in love with me, hopefully. But my dad had a heart attack. My dad, who I'm very close with, my parents are still married. They're in their mid-70s in upstate New York. And within a week of my job loss, then his meds made him weary, faint, and he fell and banged his eye and damaged his eye to the point after 3 surgeries, it's gone. Like he's got no vision. And so to have a health issue now with the financial issue, it wasn't my health issue, it wasn't my kids, but it was my dad. And that was really hard for my whole family. Then I launched my podcast, things are starting to grow, getting better and so on. But it was hard because I'm terrified with my life, and should I be doing this, and will this succeed? But my wife poured everything, all the support and faith she had into it. And then my daughter gets diagnosed with her curvature in her back is so bad she has to be put in a back brace, and this is going to be an insurance nightmare. And it's not life or death, it's scoliosis, but it's bad and it's really challenging. And then the pandemic and all my gigs, are lost. But through all of it, Alec, I pretty much shared it publicly and still am. I decided that a lot of people write books after the suck is over. I slept in my car for 5 months that year, and now look at my empire. If you do what I did, you too can rise from the ashes. It's like, you know what? No, I peaked. I had everything I wanted in my life and my family and a work-life balance and my dream gig, and I lost it. And I want to tell people what that's like. Most people never even get it. And I was and continue to be extremely honest and transparent about it. And I wasn't sure if that was going to work for people. Would they want to hear that, listen to that? Would it resonate? Would it just depress people? Would it? And to my happy surprise, it has been, as you said, it has been for you, really resonating, especially with men who have reached out to me from all over the country, who have suffered any kind of difficult loss, stress, anxiety. And I'm not trying to give anybody advice. I'm not a shrink, but I'm connecting with all these different folks who are going through these different struggles. And just the connection makes a huge difference to people. And it certainly has to me.
Listen, Pete, I get it. And I you
ever get bored during that spiel? I talked for a long time.
No, God, it's fascinating, Pete. It's no, because it is different. And it is,
I want to tell you about Joe Rogan. Okay, Russell, go ahead, Alec. I will.
Oh, okay. We there in the legendarily bad Star Trek movie Star Trek V, which Shatner directed. The plot of that is that Spock's half brother shows up, and he takes away people's pain by having them share their deepest, worst, memories.
I remember you telling me about this on the phone a couple months ago. Go ahead.
And in the scene, and so he takes away Spock's pain, and Spock's pain was that his father rejected him for being half human, and Dr. McCoy's pain was that he unplugged his father from life support, and then 2 months later a cure was discovered for the disease. So these things that really can rot a person's soul. He comes to Shatner, he says, "Let me take your pain," and Shatner's like, "No, I need my pain," and and it's really interesting. But as I've going through everything and listening to you, I'm going, no, Spock's half brother was right. You need to share your pain. I'm like, Kirk's wrong that time. It's the sharing of the pain, the sharing of what you're going through. It may or may not be cathartic for you, but other people draw strength from it. And I think that's really important.
There's the best parenting book I ever read. And I read a lot of parenting books, or I certainly do. My kids are younger. And it's called Between Parent and Child by Dr. Chaim Ganat, who's no longer with us. It's an older book. I think it was published in the 80s. But the most important lesson I took away from that parenting book was that when a child, small child, 5, 6, 7, 8 and younger, obviously, is in pain or is scared or is going through something, or had a thing happen, they don't realize that this has happened to everybody. They think they're completely alone. When someone bullied them at school, they have no idea how to deal with that. No one's told them. They think they are alone. And so as a parent, you want to take that pain away, or you want to at least know that something happened and you want to be able to address it. But the best thing you can do often is when a child tells you what they're upset about, you acknowledge it. You say, yes, I've had that happen, or I'm sorry that happened. That's terrible. And once you acknowledge that it's terrible, now this child, who it's hard to imagine the child's mind, realizes, oh, what I went through is terrible. And other people have gone through this. That doesn't change as an adult. you're just more, you're intellectually, you understand, but emotionally you don't. Intellectually, you realize you're not the first person to lose his job. You're not the first person to go through a divorce. You're not the first person to be diagnosed with cancer, to God forbid, lose a child. You're not the first person, but you don't know how the hell to deal with this. You have no idea. And when I shared my story, when I told people what I was dealing with, the universe came to me. You came to me. Michael came to me. Dustin came to me. David came to me. Susan. I mean, these are real people's names that reached out to me, who I've connected with. And maybe there'll be some of the people that are in your viewing audience tonight, and they tell you their story and you don't feel alone. And they give you suggestions, solutions, ideas, how to navigate, coping mechanisms. I mean, the littlest pieces and nuggets of advice, Alec, that people gave me, complete strangers, were game changers at times. Amazing.
Yeah. By the way, Michael Weir says, Pete, I've been through the same thing and it took 5 years, but I got backward to where I wanted to be. Hang in
now
there,
look
man.
at him. He owns a banquet center where there's a buffet. And
Dude, this is the guy that owns the pot farm.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, that's
Michael.
Michael.
Well, we got to talk because I'm growing over here and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, that's Michael will talk to you. But the thing, and when you were sharing that, the thing I want, going through your story when we first started, I just wanted to let you know that I think you're amazing because, look, I don't know what you're going through. I know I've got my own shit that I'm going through, and all I know is that when I'm going through my shit, I always have I'm always like the bold face, like, yeah, I'm going to get through this and that. But, behind the scenes, sometimes you're going, holy shit, what the hell am I going to do? But I don't know, whatever it is, I've always hell, and as everyone knows, I had 2 major film studios in Hollywood, CBS and Paramount, sue me. They didn't sue anyone else. They sued me. And everyone in Hollywood knew they're suing Alec. And, and so you can either crawl up in a ball in the corner and whine for your mom, or you can say, come on, bring it on, boys. You want to dance? I'll dance. And now that doesn't mean I had to put on that bold face. And it was funny because my director one day came into my office and said, you really like this. You like that you're getting sued by these 2 studios. And I had to say, what am I going to do? What do you want me to do? Crawl up in a ball in the corner and whine for my mommy? No. I said, I'm a lawyer. This is the greatest challenge of my life. I've got CBS and Paramount suing me. So I can either take that challenge on and say, come on, boys, let's go. Or I can give in. And that doesn't mean, though, that at night sometimes I wasn't going, my dream has been put on hold. It might go down in flames. I may never get to make this. And then who is there that's, fortunately I had my girlfriend Crystal who was supporting me and saying, don't worry, it'll be okay.
That's another thing. When you have a partner or a person in your life that supports you, it's a game changer. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that a lot of people just don't. They're not married. They don't, they're not with them. They don't have a good friend. And I've talked to some of those people as well. But struggle is normal, and everybody has their issues. And I like that you just shared yours. And is it true that you told your lawyers to tell their lawyers, quote, I'm your Huckleberry, or is that just Wikipedia? But
no. That's just
when people share their struggle, whatever their story is, I really enjoy. I'm very interested in now, as Michael just mentioned, I've been through it. I'm interested. What did you go through? How did you deal with it? What were your coping mechanisms? What worked? What didn't? And I've taken so much from other people's stories and advices. No other person's struggle is just like your own.
That's right.
But the advice, and just the sharing and just the little things that people will say, and I'm looking as we're talking here at this thing that my daughter gave me for Father's Day a couple of years ago. And I think you can see it, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That is epic.
Made by a fatherless child in China and then sent to the PTA fundraiser where my daughter bought it for Father's Day. But, and she didn't write it. And I'm pretty sure she doesn't think I'm her hero. pretty sure that
Go
was
with it, Pete. Just go with it.
but I'm just looking around my studio for comedy bits now. So,
Adam Vera, you say it's called being a parent. I guess we're referring to the earlier part of the conversation. But Adam Vera is like, he's our biggest super chatter. He'll like give us 5 super chats during the course of a night.
Very nice,
So,
Adam.
yeah,
What's
he's a
being a parent? I'm not sure what he means.
Yeah, Adam, send me another $2 and tell me what you mean.
I love that. I got to do this. Oh, I'd be very good at that. Send me $7 and I'll take out one of my nuts. Okay, no, that's a different kind. That's a different kind of channel, isn't it? I may get desperate to start. You know, it's interesting. There are the porn. I've never done that, but like the live, you can give a woman money and they'll be at their home. And right now, a lot of like sex workers are making money. You know, working
virtually.
They were doing that anyway, and that's a great way to make money. If you're a but my point isn't to go deep into that. Like, I don't think anybody's paying for me in my studio to do anything sexual. Like, I don't think, like, I'd love to think that like there's some listener out there a long time and be like, you know what, Pete, I will pay you to no, I don't think. And it's like, I'm going to go on and do that and I'll make $7. And I'm like, well,
yeah, it's that old thing. Yeah. It's the hooker who comes home at night she's married, comes home at night and I made $75 and 25 cents. Who gave me 25 cents? Everyone.
Yeah, it'll be one 75-year-old guy in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Like, okay, Pete.
I got a thing for bald middle-aged guys with salt and pepper beards.
How do we get there? Anyway, it was about parenting and about, I don't know.
Well, all right, let's change the subject. Tell us about George Takei.
Oh, George Takei. George Takei. You know, I mean, how do I talk about George Takei without being political, which we promised we wouldn't be?
Well, he has become. Listen, one way or another. I mean, Howard Stern made him a cultural icon.
Mm-hmm. Oh my!
Yeah, and
he is a very thoughtful, intelligent, educated man who has been through a childhood struggle as in an internment camp. Who can imagine? I mean, that alone is worth a life story. But then being gay. Not so much being gay in Hollywood, but being Asian, number one, being Japanese, that was difficult. And he talks about that. But of course, being gay at his age now, he was gay in the 50s.
50s, 60s.
And, any man, my uncle is a gay man who's 80, and just his stories, his life, like, you were gay when it was like, it was dangerous. And so
it was dangerous
in Hollywood and having to hide that and then be, on Star Trek. I mean, this is my point about Takei, is that he's lived many lives and he's a fascinating man. And you can't help but respect him, but his moral views are what are out front. I mean, he thoroughly enjoys talking about human rights and civil rights and justice under the law and so on. And so every conversation that I had with him was mostly about those types of things. So I don't know if people are interested in that, and they probably heard George Takei's views on that. But the one thing I will offer about Takei is that though my daughters, who are 15 and 12, but then they were probably 10 and 12 when they met Takei, were not fans of his. Didn't, they're young. They'd never seen Star Trek, certainly not the originals. And so they didn't know, but I told him, I go, this man is one of the most famous people alive. You got to get a picture with him. And when he was at, just right after he'd been on my show at Sirius XM. And so they went over and took a picture with him. But I could see just the way he was so genuine with my daughters. He was genuinely interested in them, asked about them immediately. Oh my, what's your name? What do you do? And my daughters came away, even though they didn't know who he was, they came away from a very short interaction with him as fans, because he made them feel safe and he made them feel special. And of course, that made me feel amazing. And so that's my favorite George Takei story to tell. And then just the fact that when I see him, he knows who I am is pretty cool. Oh, hello, Pete. How are you? How are the girls? Are they good? Yeah. So,
well, when we were doing the Kickstarter for our film, we released our short film the one that's up that has like 4 million views. And we launched a Kickstarter, and we raised, it was about $500,000. And
Wow.
we had one day to go. And with 24 hours to go, George Takei posts on Facebook about us and says, this is a project you should give money to. And I swear it was like that old cartoon of the car odometer just going like this. We made $100,000 in 24 hours because of George Takei. And so I got to meet him later that year. I was introduced to him, and I thanked him, of course. And he had been talking about his time in the internment camps. And one of the things he said, which I never knew, was Earl Warren, the eventual Supreme Court Chief Justice, was the governor of California when the internment camps happened. And I was like, that is mind-boggling that the guy who became the true liberal lion of the Supreme Court and introduced desegregation to this country was the governor of California when the internment camps happened in World War II. And I learned that from George Takei.
I'm shaking my head, acting like I knew that the whole time. Now, hey, by the way, where are you on internment camps? Pro, con?
At this point, now we're going to get political.
And
I'm more for rehabilitation camps for people who are for all the people who are going to be injecting disinfectant now.
All the jokes have been made in such a short amount of time already. It's like
I posted on Facebook this morning. I was like, I don't have to say anything about what happened yesterday because all of you people are doing more than I could ever do.
It's like when Trump will lay something, an egg. When Trump will lay an egg like that, anybody with a sense of humor on social media anywhere, immediately they're like termites to a board. They're like, lions to a kill, and all that's left is just dust. And what I mean by that is any ability to make a joke, to make content. I mean, once all of the written jokes over Trump's eggs that he lays are over, now people start making the memes and the pictures. And I saw a picture of a guy today with a Clorox bleach, photoshopped like an IV into his there. And you saw somebody photoshopped, a Clorox bleach jar where they were tablets that you could eat. And, all the jokes have been made and you're like, oh, I had something. Oh, forget it.
Exactly.
I'm too late to the party.
Exactly. Michael Weir says, besides Pete, we Dominicks have got to stick together. His middle name is Dominick, but you spell yours without a K, Michael. So you are inferior to Pete Dominick in that regard. He has one letter on you.
Well, I've always had the burden, according to the universe, that I have two first names. And the name Dominick is more likely a first name than a last name. And so when I'll be calling to, book a flight, and yes, Alec, I do it myself. I don't have somebody, agent or a business manager, not anymore. But that does that for me. But people will always, the agent's always like, okay, Dominick, now that's your last name? Like, they're questioning me. And I'm like, listen, I'm 44. I mean, there's no way I made a mistake. Yes. What if anybody that is in any kind of Hispanic ethnicity always will add a Q to it? Dominique.
Oh, I got you.
It's such a struggle being in there.
Listen, we only have a few minutes left, so I want to ask you. You have so many people on your show. You've had so many great people that I've always enjoyed over the years. I'm not going to say who do you like best or who is the worst. Who is the most memorable? Who brought something the show went in a totally different direction of the way you thought it would go. You were like, okay, wow, that was interesting.
You should have asked me to think about that before the show.
Okay.
There's a lot. That's a great question. Jewel, the singer-songwriter, was very special. The actor Taye Diggs and I cried together. Neither of us were expecting that. Dick Cavett and I connected in a way that created a lifelong relationship.
Pete, I got to tell you that you and I have that in common. I have always just held Dick Cavett in awe. And I finally got to meet him in LA, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, and take photos with him. And I told him, I said, Dick, I'm a fan of yours because my mother raised me on your show. And he goes, your mother's a wonderful woman.
Yeah. The guy's a comedy genius and an amazing guy. And I recently was at his home a couple months ago. I had reached out to him and said, I want to see you. And so I basically invited myself up, or really his wife made a little party and invited a small gathering of folks. And he'd had a stroke last year. I don't know if that's public, so maybe I shouldn't say that, but hopefully nobody will, but whatever.
We have that many listeners.
Who's going to give a shit about that right now? So I go into his house, beautiful new home, mansion, actually, in Connecticut. Not new, it's old, but it's like I guess walking into the Gatsby house. And I don't know who's going to be there. I know there's a small gathering of folks. And the only other person there was Christopher Walken.
Oh, my gosh.
I walk into Dick Cavett's home, and it's just me, Dick Cavett, and Christopher Walken. And what ensued was another just life changer, great story for the ages, where I just hung out with Chris Walken the whole afternoon, and we were just making each other laugh. And that dude I said to him, I go, all due respect, I wasn't sure. I knew you have great comic timing. You can deliver a joke well, but I often thought, I give a lot of credit to the writers. You don't need writers. You are hilarious. And he was I could tell you stories if we had time, but he told me, he was so funny, Chris Walken. And, of course, Cavett was gracious, and I could tell you a million stories about him. But so those are the answers to, a few people who, I don't have as much expectations with a lot of the journalists or academics that are interviewed.
Sure.
A lot
of them pretty much on point.
You think. Billy Bob Thornton was really, really cool and down to earth. And I thought he was going to be an asshole. He was great guy. So many, Regina King, so many great. Carl Weathers blew my mind.
Really? Why?
He was really funny, and I wasn't expecting humor. And he was very good live, and he was thoughtful. He was a very thoughtful, kind of erudite man. And, I just thought he was an actor, and I didn't know, I knew he was Apollo Creed, and I didn't know much about him. So he was really fascinating. And Chris Elliott, the comedian.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So that guy, I would say, is the guy who made me laugh the hardest.
Really?
But there are many people I could tell you about were just so funny. That dance with Bob Saget, to dance with Saget is amazing. Artie Lang, so many different comedians that are so talented to have on the air.
I tell you, I remember I think I remember the first time I heard you on the air with Dick Cavett.
Yeah.
And then it would be again and again. And I was like, I thought I was like the only guy who just totally cherishes Dick Cavett. And I really have always, and there's another reason I've always appreciated you, because you're
a lot of us.
Yeah. He's just a legend. Yeah. The other guy I wish was still alive, because I feel like I would love to, would be Jack Parr.
I don't know anything about Jack Parr. I don't know.
Oh, God, you got to watch his old shows. They're all available either online.
Don't you come in here and tell me what I have to do.
Hey, here's another question I have to watch. I'm sorry.
Well, then you have to watch Esther Perel's TED Talk.
Esther Perel? All right. I love TED Talks.
Everybody should watch Esther Perel's TED Talk. I only mention that right now because I'm trying to be funny, A, and B, I was talking to somebody else earlier and mentioned this, but if you're a married person, watch this TED Talk, Perel. And sometimes there's very few, talks, TED Talks or radio interviews or things that really you just are unforgettable because they change the trajectory of your life. But Esther Perel's TED Talk changed the trajectory of my marriage at one point. And
wow,
mind blowing.
Wow. So here's a question that's kind of political. Who is the one person from the other side of the political spectrum that you really enjoy talking to? Because I'm sure
the question is, who do I enjoy talking to? It's most of them. I mean, I'll talk to a Trump supporter for hours. But to give you a more specific example, and then, someone that people would maybe know, I would say Newt Gingrich.
Really?
Yeah, he is a fascinating and very highly intelligent man. I question his morality, but he is brilliant, articulate, you know, thought-provoking person. Morally, again, I mean, he may be Satan, but boy, he's smart. Yeah.
So is he which one of the Sith Lords coming to master and pupil who's the master? Mitch McConnell,
the one whose pupil has to carry his head because it's so big and heavy.
Is that really? Well, on that, as we enter dangerous ground, that is a good time for us to cut it off. Not before Adam Vera's third super chat of the night. It's like arguing with my engineer.
What does that mean?
I don't know, Adam. You keep giving us snippets of thoughts here.
What is that? I need to know what the hell that means. I'm not going to be able to go to sleep, Adam. It's like,
yeah, Adam, come on, fork over another $2 and tell us what you mean here.
He donates. He spends $2 to make a random fragment.
I think he likes messing with us. That's he's like triggering us here. I guess that's it.
Bullet said, I thought Nancy Pelosi was the Sith Lord.
No. All right. Well, listen.
Newt Gingrich was a history professor, wasn't he? Really supports American space exploration, so that's a virtue to me. All right.
Well, everyone has some endearing quality, right?
Yeah. It's just that his head is like a jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah.
Very big.
Are you pro space program, Pete?
I don't know. I'm too ignorant. I mean, it's a fascinating question. I'm kind of pro spending money on exploring what we have here on Earth and helping people. Government expenditures in space exploration is a fascinating discussion versus private expenditures. But yeah, I don't know.
Now you've had Neil deGrasse Tyson on your show
many times. More interestingly than Neil deGrasse Tyson, I've interviewed at least 3 astronauts, and most importantly, Chris Hadfield a number of times, a Canadian guy who's on the space station, a guy who played guitar up there in the space station. But the other, I forget his name. Oh boy, I gotta look it up. But I was at the Aspen Ideas Festival, in Aspen, Colorado, where they had a dinner one night at the top of the mountain at night. You have to take the gondola up, and you have dinner, and you're here with all these hoity-toity folks. One of which was an astronaut who had been a commander on 3 shuttle missions. And forgive me for not remembering his name. But we looked through high-powered telescopes at the top of the mountain with him, Alec. Imagine looking at space with a person who's been there. I wasn't too stupid to not recognize the weight of that moment. I'm looking up into space with a guy who'd been to space, and there's only a handful on the planet. Then I made sure that I got in his gondola, which only holds 4, on the way down, and asked him every question I could. But it was an amazing night I will never, ever forget, except for apparently his name.
Oh, and now things are just getting worse because now Adam Vera gives us $2 and doesn't even say anything.
It's based on my last story.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, you going to have Neil deGrasse Tyson on your podcast?
I haven't thought of it. I'm not good at talking with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's so good on the radio. But I always had him because he was always booked for us. Like he had a show on the channel, and he was like an employee at Sirius XM, and I'm always happy to talk to him. But certain cosmology and physics and space exploration are not in my wheelhouse. As much as I like to talk about almost everything that's fascinating, for whatever reason, I never went down those roads very far. They seem almost too complex and difficult and challenging for me. But I certainly would have him on. I should have him on. He'd probably say no. He's a big deal. I've gotten some pretty big deals though lately. You are on fire, Pete. You're doing a great job. So listen, I want to wrap by saying, everyone, please, listen to Pete's podcast. It's available everywhere. Stand Up with Pete Dominick, okay, with a K at the end, and listen to it. Take a gander. I listen to Pete as often as I can because I love the guests that he has on. He's okay too.
and you should too. And if you're done throwing money at the Axanar Patreon, at the Aries Studios Patreon, Pete Dominick has a Patreon. We're going to supply the link here in the description. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick.
Just check out the podcast, give it a listen,
give it a listen.
And if you don't connect with me, that's totally fine. But if you do connect with me, then you'll have a new friend, and you'll learn something every day, because it's not about me. It's about the guests that I have on. And I have anything, Alec, I have a great network of people that I can easily, in a moment, get on the phone about any number of issues, from epidemiology to climate change to parenting, so we talk about everything and with experts. And so people like that. And it's, it's like NPR with a personality.
That's a very good way of saying it. Yeah, very good. And when you have Julie Mason, you better let me know.
You got it, buddy.
I love Julie Mason. She's awesome.
Thank you for having me, pal. I appreciate it.
Listen, absolutely. Thank you, Pete. It was wonderful and enlightening, and I love your story, and I'm a big supporter. So if we could just get a few more fans your way, mission accomplished.
Absolutely. But even if not, it was great to talk to you, and I appreciate being here and hanging out tonight.
All right. And as we have to give you the Vulcan salute, which is big now. Almost. You're there. You're close enough. Yeah. This is good. Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go. Yep.
So sorry.
I'll teach you. You'll get there eventually. Right. Take care. Best to your family.
All right, you too, buddy. Thank you.
Take care. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you again. See you again tomorrow. There will be no morning show tomorrow because I'm on a dog rescue mission tomorrow morning, but we will be tomorrow night. 2 Geek Girls at 9. And here followed up by Trek After Dark, Axanar After Dark on the weekends. So thank you so much. Thanks to our friend Pete Dominick, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.